Greetings, everyone.
Hey, everybody.
We are back. Make sure that if you have not,
That you go visit our website, webuildlegacy.com, so you can download your free resource, What's Black Love Got to Do with It? So that
absolutely.
you can be a part of our reading and commentary.
Exactly. I'm excited. Like I said, I'm so excited that we have commentary for these parts, and I'll just wait and save my talk till after the video, because this really lays the foundation for what all of this research and everything was about. So listen up, and we'll talk soon.
Introduction. Nigerian author Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie has spoken about the danger of the single story and how where a person begins, a story matters. For far too long, a single perspective and narrative of the African in the diaspora has been accepted as the ultimate truth about who we are. That belief that there is a single story, a single way to view the world, a single interpretation of events that have occurred, a single truth about the historical context of humans in this world is pervasive in modern culture. Not only is the single story detrimental to the collective, but it is often the story of conquest and colonization of indigenous peoples from a perspective that minimizes achievements and demonizes histories of other cultures. The single story in a country like the United States, a nation that is a conglomerate of ethnicities, serves as a tool of erasure of the cultures that have sustained the country. For those who are not a part of the majority culture, there is often a cognitive dissonance, which occurs when a person is forced to coexist with or reconcile two incompatible ideas or beliefs. In modern culture, cognitive dissonance usually shows up as the tension or discomfort between what is broadly accepted as the single story that we should all embrace as the truth, and all of the other stories that make up the tapestry of American culture. While the concept of telling a story seems harmless, the power of the influence of the story that a person embraces is undeniable. As a descendant of Africans who were kidnapped from West Africa during the transatlantic slave and other parts of Africa, I am finding the stories of my ancestors before they arrived in the Americas more valuable than I ever could have imagined. Even with all of my Western education, I realized that listening only to the single story disabled me. There have been great efforts taken to hide these stories that included pillaging, destruction, and blatant sins of commission. In fact, the tellers of the single story have gone to great lengths to ensure that certain people are always portrayed as good and others as evil, no matter what their deeds. These inconsistencies in what had been presented as universal truth caused a lot of internal conflict in me. Additionally, as I met new people and traveled to other countries, I saw people existing in different ways that verified what I had begun to believe was true. That embracing the single story of the United States of America had required me to surrender certain parts of myself that were necessary for me to remember who I am as a daughter of Africa. While I have written specifically about its effects on people of African descent, the single story is harmful to everyone. Cognitive dissonance is a perpetual mental state for any person that accepts the single story of the United States as it is presented in school or in mainstream culture. In many ways, it weakens the ability to reason and to think critically about situations. Once individuals have been presented with additional information that shows that there are contradictions in the story, then there is a decision to be made. At that moment, the person has to decide whether they will accept the new information and allow it to alter their perception of reality, or rationalize the new information away to maintain belief systems as they have always been. When I understood my problem, I decided to attack it head on. I began to look for myself and African influence in everything. When I did that, it was as if I could see myself for the first time. There is literally nothing you can study that does not have an African influence if you look for it. What I ultimately found was that the cure for my cognitive dissonance was cognitive justice. Cognitive justice challenges the notion that the only viable story is the single story of the dominant culture. It asserts the right for diverse paradigms to coexist. When considering romantic partnerships among African Americans, it is of vital importance that we have more than a single story or paradigm as a model for our lives. This ebook represents cognitive justice in relationship education where African Americans are concerned. It represents an opportunity for individuals, regardless of ethnicity or background, to resolve some of their cognitive dissonance by expanding some limiting perspectives about historical context of Black people. For African Americans, resolving cognitive dissonance is an opportunity to free ourselves in a different way that is necessary to fully embrace self-determination, the ability to define ourselves, name ourselves, create for ourselves, and to speak for ourselves.
Yay!
Man, so what a reading, for this particular introduction within what's Black Love got to do with it. And when Andrea was reading this excerpt, what was coming to mind was our musical skill sets. Now, we're not professionals, but we do.
We are professionals.
Okay,
whatever.
in our own right.
Whatever that means.
Yes, whatever.
Yeah,
exactly. So,
continue.
not to go down there, because they would go comparing ourselves.
There you go. So, what would you say?
But anyway, there are certain songs that we play that have chord arrangements that could be dissonant chords. We talk about cognitive dissonance here, and there are certain chords that bring about a certain tension within the song.
Yeah.
And it doesn't have to be good or bad, but it kind of leaves you hanging, like, when you play something, a good song or sing a good note, and you like kind of twitch your head when you play that keyboard note, you like, you got to put your like you getting down, like,
that's you. Yeah, that's you.
Like, oh, I hit that. That was bad. But to live in a state of tension continually and walking around with your neck crooked, after a while, this becomes a deformity, and you don't want to be walking around this deformity when it becomes natural. There has to be,
especially when it wasn't. It's not yours. It's one just because you're not willing to. You're walking in it. You're choosing it. You're not. This is not something that was imposed on you. You're walking in a space that doesn't fit you right.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's real good. And so you want to get to a place where, Andrea mentions, and it was something I was listening to and heard, it talked about cognitive justice. You want to get to a point where you come out of that tension into a release or resolve, a cognitive justice. And that portrays the two ideas that she is explaining within this introduction. has to do with the story, not just one story, but the truth and the whole story. Let's resolve the tension that's been presented within trying to fit in a model or a deficit model, because it doesn't have to deal with your story, but look at the whole truth and come to a cognitive justice and resolution to, okay, so this is the whole story.
Or as much of it as we can get.
Good point.
I know that what I was presented with wasn't it. I want to say something because I want to make people think no one got anything wrong.
Sure.
You were saying before about, you use the word deformity, and I want to make sure that none of that is taken in the wrong way.
Okay, good. Yeah, thank you for painting the right
literally,
picture.
he played, that's his.
Yeah,
that's his.
When you play I guess the musicians who know when you play in the keyboard, you like do it. Oh,
they
that was
start
good.
doing that. But I don't want anybody to think that that was meant in some kind of derogatory way.
Yes.
Anytime you're walking outside of the space that is designed for you, it's like, it'd be the same way as if you're growing and your shoes, you're still wearing the same shoes, and it causes you to kind of walk like this. And you're like, baby, why are you walking like that? These shoes, they hurt, and because of that, people would stretch out shoes first. Or my dad tells stories about how, my grandparents would actually like soak the shoes wet, like they were leather shoes, and they would soak them and stretch them out because they couldn't afford to get other shoes. So they would stretch those, get those wet, stretch them out, and you had to wear those. But sometimes we walk around in discomfort, and we stay in situations and in positions that are uncomfortable, and we treat them as if there's something wrong with us, when it's really, I use this example all the time with you. When we talking to couples, it's like we're sitting here together, and if I, and he's like kicking my leg, he's kicking my leg. I'm like, dang, stop kicking, you're kicking my leg. Oh, okay, sorry. And then he goes back to kicking my leg again. And babe, I just said you were kicking my leg. Why don't you stop kicking my leg? All right, sorry. And he goes and back to kicking. Why are you kicking my leg? Why do you keep kicking my leg? Why do y'all watching him kick my leg? Why is he kicking my leg? Okay, at a certain point, when am I going to reposition myself and say, yo, let me move from you. Let me do something different. And in a lot of ways, majority culture comes at us like, and we feel like, oh, they're just oppressing us. Listen, got plenty of room to talk about the oppression that happens based on white supremacist systems and majority culture. But this is not what that is. Some of these choices we make to stand and sit a certain way and just sit like this, and well, why is well, it's because if I put it down, then whatever,
Wow.
well, why are you doing this thing? Well, it's just easier to sit like this because they're, it's like being on the train and being on a bus or something like that. And my son talks about, Tulani and the man spreading, man, whatever. I don't have no problems. If I'm sitting down or whatever, it's like, oh my gosh, he's man spreading. His legs are just wide open. He's taking up all the space. All of these terminologies and stuff get me because it's like, look, oh, I'm sorry, excuse me. I sit down, I do whatever. All of this, I don't know. It's like you put yourself in a victim role, and there's no need for that.
And I think a lot of these terminologies and these roles, they come from a place of fear. And the fear.
What do you think it's fear of?
I think it's a lot of fear that comes around with not dealing with the whole truth in the story. And the way this our particular country has come into being and just developed from a scenario where you get something free labor for nothing, and you develop this model, and then you try to fix it and patch over it. It actually develops a situation that's not healthy for all those that are involved, and you kind of like cover over it. And so now you deal with this fear, like, man, if I really start telling the truth now, it's just not going to be well with me, and so I might as well stay where I'm at by presenting this this case that this is the right way, when there is the right way is the truth, and the whole way meaning is that let me stop subsiding and not telling or sharing the truth about what Africans contributed to the world, and not looking at what's Black or what's from Africa as being deficient or wrong. Mm-hmm. But actually, it's a necessary source within our earth to cause and create balance and harmony. Exactly. Being African and being Black is a beautiful thing. And that's one thing that we want to create in this particular presentation, this particular study of what's Black love got to do with it.
Yeah.
Black love has everything to do with it.
And so I had a couple of questions that came up, and I just want to leave them with you. What story do you embrace? You know, there's a story, you know, Black men, they just ain't hardly none of mine. The ones I had, girl. I'm just telling you what I birthed 4 sons. We worked to make them as excellent as possible. They have their own process. But every time I talk to them, I'm telling them, you are amazing. And I see your growth. I watch them go through the same things everyone else goes through. And ultimately, they're making decisions. And so they're embracing a story. It's not my story. It's the stories that I tell them all the time. Literally, when I was like, we did our best to present you with powerful Black women with that's how they refer to them, like these strong, whatever, Black women that have standards and all of these things. So when you come and you tell me, man, these girls, I said, your mama ain't there. Mm-hmm. Your aunties ain't there. Mm-hmm. None of the people we surrounded you with were that. So the fact that you choose to follow a path and a storyline of individuals, that is, why are you choosing the story? Why are you choosing the story of deficiency? That's what we say to them. And because we're talking to young Black couples, we're going to ask the same thing of you. You're in a formative time in your life. What story are you going to choose? You know, make some decisions. I know you probably have made some already. All right, decide. You're going to make some different decisions. Figure out what you want to do, because ultimately you are writing another story. Yes. Don't be, you know, yes. I'm honest. I tell my sons, I tell others, you know, are you more confirmation that, I gotta watch my mouth, because, you know, are you more confirmation that Black women ain't this and Black men ain't that? Are you walking around like that? Are you causing pain to people? You know, are you walking around with all these hurts? And like we talked about, you know, before, all this discomfort in these uncomfortable positions, and other people, because they're trying to relate to you, they're getting hurt too, because you're kicking legs and you're doing stuff. Are you in that role? What story is your story? Which one are you embracing? Which one are you creating? And then, can I just say this? I
was about to. I don't know which one you're gonna know. Go ahead.
Wait, no, you say it then if you see one up here.
No, I thought you were going to read that bottom part.
I'll let you read it. So I'll point these other 2 things out, or 3 things. I want you to remember this as well. The Western stories, and because we're born in the United States, the U.S. story specifically requires a surrender of yourself. I asked you, what story are you embracing? If you're embracing the story, the U.S. story, understand this very, very clearly. There are fights all the time about statues being up, down, and whatever. We don't want to lose our history. We don't want to erase history when that's the thing that was done. Erasure of our history, erasure of our culture, erasure of who we have been, of our languages, of our family names, all those things. When you embrace that single story, it will require you to surrender your own. Mm-hmm. So just keep that in mind. And that means that as we go through this, you're going to see some contradictions. I'm going to ask you, what are you going to do with them? Mm-hmm. You know, I've tried to present them so you can go and look at things yourself. And I'm grateful for my husband for the cognitive justice, because he brought me some haymakers, and that's one of them that he brought. I have been talking about cognitive dissonance. And he says, you know, babe, I think the notion of cognitive justice is what counteracts cognitive dissonance. And so that just made me happy.
And that brings the resolve. It brings the peace on the inside.
Exactly.
A resolute for you to get to that place where Andrea had just put at the end, at the end of this
Right,
reading.
right. When you finish that, I want you to read that again about cognitive justice.
Sure. And what I was going to say was about being self-determined. Self-determination is one of the principles within the Nguzo Saba for
Kujichagulia principle. Yeah.
Yes, and it says having the ability to define oneself, to name ourselves, to create for ourselves, and to speak for ourselves. This is that particular opportunity where you can come outside the box to think critically and be able to design, I guess, from scratch a format and a foundation that will create your relationships and those that will follow, something that's sustainable, where you don't have to be defined as lesser than or come from a deficit model of being compared to somebody that doesn't look like you, that doesn't have the same historical context as you, and then be okay with that. Mm-hmm. And so Dr. Andrea wanted me to go ahead and
this right here where cognitive justice.
Cognitive justice challenges the notion that the only viable story is the single story of the dominant culture. It asserts the right for diverse paradigms to coexist.
Coexist, yes.
So when considering romantic partnerships among African Americans, it is of vital importance that we have more than a single story or paradigm as a model for our lives.
I think we can end right there. That just, y'all stay in the journey with us. Stay with us.
Go ahead and go to webuildlegacy.com. Download your copy of What's Black Love Got to Do with It. And don't forget also to take a look at those free resources that we have available for you. And don't forget to share, like this video, comment below so that we can continue the conversation going forward. So
absolutely.
Thank you guys.
We will see you all on the next one. Stay with us.